And there is a big conversation about legal education that is about to engulf Parliament, because finally there's going to be a bill that is going to go to Parliament that will open up legal education in this country. In fact, those who support it are calling it the Freedom of Legal Education Bill. And that is a very fascinating bill indeed, considering how controversial the subject of opening up legal education has been over the years. It was last week that the Majority Chief Whip was on the show, and he dropped that very interesting hint that they're actually going to consider this under a certificate of urgency. It is so controversial and it's so significant that we need to pause for a second and dedicate a whole show to unpack what is in this particular proposed bill and what you can expect and what this will mean for legal education in this country. Since the 1960s, in fact, 1950s, when the initial architecture of legal education was set up, no significant change has happened. This is going to be the first major change as far as that is concerned. We'll talk about that, but there's only one place to start. And if you're just joining us tonight, this is the biggest news of the day. Dropped just around 5 p.m. when the Office of the Special Prosecutor held a much-anticipated press conference and declared him wanted. If you're wondering who that is a former finance minister. He's tonight wanted again. Not only that, on top of being declared wanted, the OSP has triggered processes for a global manhunt for him. Wherever he is, the OSP says he wants him arrested provisionally and extradited to Ghana. And just before he addressed the press, around 5 p.m. today, the Special Prosecutor, Kise Jabed, had triggered that process to have him repatriated back into Ghana. So he's going to put up the red notice, and he's expecting this to be done tomorrow. He's already triggered the process for this to happen. Kenneth Fureta, he says, will be brought in into Ghana, and he's also expecting that globally, Interpol will arrest him wherever they find him and bring him into Ghana. So that is where we are tonight with Kenneth Fureta, because he also disclosed that the lawyers had written to him on the 28th of May saying that he cannot come in person for interrogation. Remember that in February, his lawyers have written to the OSP saying he isn't well, he is in the US, and somewhere in March, he will undergo a surgical procedure that will render him inability to travel into Ghana. And so they were asking for the OSP to give them time for him to return in person and answer the questions. Well, the OSP disclosed today that apparently that surgical procedure didn't happen. He claims he was not told about it, only for his lawyers to write to him very recently, a couple of weeks ago, but last week, that they will rather allow him to do instead a virtual encounter with the OSP. OSP says he completely dismisses that request. He will not accept it. And so he feels he's been disrespected, and Fureta is choosing when and how he should be subjected to the laws of this country as far as the criminal charges against him is concerned. The OSP also says they haven't submitted one evidence to back his claim that he isn't well, that he hasn't received anything from a doctor to show that he isn't well. And so that is why tonight he's a wanted man. Tomorrow, the processes, if indeed goes through, he will be declared and put on the Interpol red notice. And globally, the trigger for his arrest and extradition back into Ghana to face the music is on. Fascinating indeed for a former finance minister, the likes of which we haven't seen before. So that is the latest on this today. And you can expect that we can look into this a bit more tomorrow, where we can get to the heart of this. Either we bring his legal team here, track them in the US, if you may, and get some clarity. Even the OSP itself, right, on this matter, we'll unpack it for you. But let's return to our main focus today. I mean, this is something that many have talked about. I will tell you why this is important. You know that it's a monopoly, the Mokola monopoly. If you don't go to Mokola, that's where you do the practical part of the law. You cannot be called to the bar. Now, there is a push for this whole education, as far as the law is concerned, to be decentralized, right? Now, here is how it works. Currently, we have LLBs, what you need to get, the to first of all even qualify to go into the Ghana Law School, right? You have more than 25 tertiary institutions, and Dafemeko has written extensively about this in this country. And Mokola is only one. So everybody else's funnel is created. So you have lots of people attaining LLB, and then when it comes to the point where they need to get the professional education, there's only one place to go, and that means a lot of people now are sifted out. And so they find this very crude means called the entrance exam to sift people out, and it's not meritorious. It's simply a case of we don't have space, so let's find ways of just whittling people out, and that is where the problem really is. And so you become a lawyer, you have to go through this. And those who want this law in say we need to change this. Also because you have the entrance exam, an average of just 30% going through. I mean, of one majority of close to 70%, right, don't go through. So this tells you it's not a fair process at all. And if it is about education, it has to be meritorious, and that indeed isn't one you can say for this. If you look at the number of those who sat for the exams, for example, 5,000, right, the Mokola entrance exam, the pass rate is just around 1,444. So that tells you there's a big problem there. It is a case of space, not necessarily that people aren't good enough to enter Mokola. Look at this, number of lawyers called to the bar since 1960. I saw this and it's astonishing, but it's according to the Ghana Bar Association itself, only 9,041 called to the bar since that time. No wonder we are talking about 140 called to the bar on the average since 1960. And this ratio translates then to one lawyer is to 4,170 people. It is completely unacceptable. We are considerably underlawyered in this country. One lawyer to 4,170 people. That isn't acceptable. Countries that got into this legal training later than us, because we were the first in sub-Saharan Africa to open the Ghana School of Law, right? And yeah, other countries have gone way ahead in terms of the lawyer, citizen population ratio. And look at where we are. This needs to be improved significantly. And that is why this is being opened, right? And if you look at the ranking, for example, out of the 50 countries, look at where we are. The Ghana's lawyer to population ratio, we're ranking at 44. So there's something must happen. Something must change. For a long time, the status quo has been enough for people in the legal profession and those who matter. But something has to change. And that's why there's this push. This bill has been drafted. And Roxanne Dafemeko, who is the majority chief whip, tells us that they want to consider this under certificate of urgency, right? And out of the 9,000 called to the bar since the 1960s, only 7,386 are active, right? So some of them have retired, died. So the number is even smaller than you think. And the situation is actually worse. If you do the regional balance, you'll see that there's significant problems. In Upper East, for example, only 38 lawyers you can find there. 28 lawyers you can find there. If you look at the Upper West, is 34. If you come to Greater Accra, the vast majority of them are here at 5,000 plus, right? So we need a distribution of this. But the more lawyers you have, the chances are that you can grow the numbers in the other regions that are completely underserved as far as the number of lawyers is concerned. So let's talk about this. What really is in this act and what should it look like, and what do you really solve the problem? What about the question of quality? Once you open it up, how do you fix that problem? Because those who argue against a law such as this that will open up legal education say what you're doing is potentially undermining quality. Is that a valid point, and how will this law fix that? My guest will join me after this. Stay with me for the conversation. for staying with us here on PM Express on the night when the OSP decided to declare Kanu Furiata wanted again and went to the Interpol with a red notice. And tomorrow we may see an international manhunt for him, as he himself had said, to arrest and bring him in. Let's have a conversation about legal education generally in Ghana, because it's been a contentious subject for so long. But now there is a legislative, there's a law that the parliamentarians, a bill the parliamentarians will have to consider in the House. PM Express is always brought to you by Syntax Tanks, also brought to you by Academic Times and by Pepsi and Cavity Fighter Toothpaste. My guest joining me for a conversation is the MP for Medina. He is Francis Xavier Sosu. He's a member of the General Legal Council, but I know he's been very instrumental in trying to get this particular bill first shaped. And now, as we know, the president himself announced it as part of the list of things that will be looked at. And the majority leader now says we should expect it to come in this meeting. So I'm delighted to have him so he can give us a sense of what this particular bill will look like and what problem will they be solving. And so I'm delighted to have him, Francis. Grateful that you can join us. Also joining me is Kwekwan Sassare. He's the former director of the Ghana School of Law. He himself runs a private institution that trains lawyers for the LLB, so he really understands it very, very well. And I was just telling him that once that bill is passed into law and assented to, I would enroll in his institution. Hassan Asari is the National Association of Law Students. He leads that association and joins me in the studio. You know, they have a huge stake in this matter as well. And I'm grateful that all of you can join me. But Francis, let me start with you first. First of all, give me a sense of what this particular bill is seeking to do and which specific challenge is it seeking to solve with legal education in Ghana.
Very much, Evans, and good evening to my colleague panelists. Let me say that as a matter of a disclaimer that the views I share here are not necessarily views of the General Legal Council. They are personal views based on the work we've done in respect of the need to reform legal education, and so should be treated as such. So I would say that legal education in Ghana has been fraught with a number of challenges over the years. And if you would recall, about 2 or 3 years ago, myself and Honorable Dafia Mekpo introduced a bill in the Parliament of Ghana to break the monopoly of training lawyers in Ghana, which was until recently, or maybe still at the practice, solely run by Makola at the time. And we realized that there were a lot of, it created a barrier to accessing, legal education by the introduction of the entrance examination, and even the entrance examination itself was fraught with a number of challenges. There were times that determining even the threshold of passing was a problem, and sometimes it becomes a matter of the whims and caprices of someone, because we didn't have very clear-cut rules governing that approach. And so it was so necessary that there was the need for a legislative intervention. You will recall that there was even the case of 499 that actually passed per the threshold even of the examination board, and yet we never had the chance to go to the law school, and we had to take to the street and demonstrate before eventually they were considered to be part of the school. And recently they all graduated and they are doing well now. And so clearly there has been some fundamental challenges with legal education. You recall that the Act 32, which is the Legal Professions Act, which regulates this space, was passed way back in the 1960s. And these are colonial relics that, in the light of modern technology, in the light of our growing population, remember that this act was passed at a time that the population of Ghana was just about some 3 million, and those who were yearning to be lawyers were just in few hundreds. Now we have a population of over 33 million Ghanaians, and many more people have developed interest in the subject area. So it's so necessary that we have a major legislative overhaul that can reposition legal education where it ought to be, in this day and time. And so I would say that the new proposal that is coming is a proposal that is going to make legal education more equitable. It's going to make legal education more open. It's going to break the monopoly and allow other faculties that have the capacity to run, the law education subject to proper oversight by the council. And I mean, that is what I can say as a matter of preliminary
So for
comment.
example, more specifically, a school like Mount Crest will not only train for LLB, but after your LLB, you continue in that same school, and then you study for maybe 2 years, and then you sit the bar in Mount Crest. Is that what you're proposing?
Absolutely. You could have the capacity to do that. So it's going to follow what we call the best practices that we have over the world. Evans, the truth is that if you were doing like JD in, say, US or maybe doing LLB in Canada, there are times that by the time you finish your 4 years, as part of the training, because the training itself is experiential in nature, once you finish and you graduate, sometimes 6 months after graduation, you actually can write the bar and pass. Okay. Why? Because most of what is taught even now at law school are incorporated into curriculum. People do hands-on training, experiential. They do interpretation, they do contract, they do legal instrument, they write, opinions. They try to, design and craft writs and motions and so on and so forth as part of the training. So you can have a hands-on training that by the time a student finishes, like even 5th year doing LLB or 4 years or 6 years, depending on how fast a particular student may be, you can just register for the bar and take the bar. And when you pass, you know that you have your time to do your pupillage, then you can get your solicitor's license or the practicing license. And so it's a proposal that is going to completely overhaul legal education. And really, I want to appreciate the Attorney General for taking a bold decision and leading this way. And we are hoping that very, very soon, when it's laid, the bill is laid in Parliament, we'll have the fullness of the bill, and we can even have more conversation in and around how we can shape it to make legal education the best in Ghana.
No, so sorry, what's your response to that? I mean, that seemed to be a more progressive way of looking at it. Do you agree that this is what we need to do?
Thank you. I think that the first place, the title of the bill, legal education bill, is a little troubling because legal education comprises the academic route as well as the professional route. And it is the intention of the government to decentralize, maybe regionalize or ensure that all the law faculties are converted sort of into institutions that are capable of training, intending, lawyers for the country. Then the designation of the bill must be legal education and legal practice. The legal education focuses solely on the academic component, of the training of an intending lawyer. So if we desire to arrest, some of the intractable challenges, that are facing the training of lawyers, then the bill must be holistic, cover every aspect of the problem that has been identified. And other than that, we'll address a portion of the problem and leave another hanging, for a future generation. So I agree with Xavier, that the system we inherited from the British, is not helping us. You go to the US where they are LLB, the JD program. They've integrated, academic into the professional programs.
Okay.
So if you are studying contract, for instance, they will add negotiation, skills training, maybe mediation, conciliation, opinion writing, drafting. But here, The first 3 years of our training is academic, and we teach how, and where to find the source of the law. So, if I'm teaching you, say, Ghana legal system, I need, to tune your mind to where you can find knowledge, information about, the law, so the sources of law. But when you get to the law school, that 2-year program is where you are going, to train or to be trained in the nuances of legal practice. It's too late. So by the time you finish the 2 years, you don't even know how to move a court. So your first day in court, you are moving a court, and judge, you are before me, you are moving a court. Move the court. How do you move a court? A day after, being called.
But I thought that's what you've been taught at the
no.
Mokola doesn't teach
So
you
when
that.
we finish, you are supposed to do a pupillage. It is at the pupillage stage that your pupil master may take you, to the courtroom, and then see for the first time how these things are done. The law itself is learned, not in the classroom.
In practice.
In practice, on the job, in chambers. So when you are deviling for your pupil master, how to make tea, coffee, this, bring a file, take this thing here, go and file this thing for me. When you go there, ask the court clerk, how these things are done. Then you are being taught the nitty-gritties of the law. But in the classroom, it is all bookish, highly academic. We are writing, long and drudgery. We want, the main objective is to try to classify the future generation of lawyers. Those to go and teach first class upper. Those to go, to the courtroom as advocates, the lower third class ordinary part. They turn out to be the best lawyers.
They turn out to be the best.
Yes, not
those, the first class.
Not at all. Not at all. So the academic phase is simply, to classify and know who will do what in future.
But I find it fascinating that the professional practice that you need to go through the Mokola doesn't teach you how on the first day on the job, go before a court and move a court.
It's just an extension of the academic phase, to tell you the truth.
So that what you're suggesting, back to the law, that the bill, what you're suggesting, if you make it broader, then that law then also tries to deal with that defect.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that then you also then incorporate into that whole system a training that allows you on the first day, you have some basics.
That's right.
Okay, that's what you mean. Okay, stay with me. I'll come back to you, but I want to quickly get Xavier's thoughts on this because it's a very important addition. Xavier, what do you make of that? That expanded to include not just legal education, but legal education and practice.
So that is, I perfectly agree with Prof on this one. I have the sense that there is potentially going to be legal practice authority set up that will regulate the practice of the law itself, the practice itself. However, the good news is that the life of a bill in Parliament begins with its first reading. After the first reading, we would have the chance to do what we call, it would be referred to the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, and the committee is going to have a public engagement where we have all major stakeholders like Prof and other heads of institutions who would come and make very cogent input into the bill. We want a situation where the bill that will come out I want to use the word, I'm just losing out the word I want to, it can stand the test of time. If we are doing a new bill today on legal education, we want a bill that can regulate legal education for the next 100 years. And it will stand the test of time because it is very progressive and it's very futuristic. So there's going to be a broad stakeholder engagement to really shaping this bill, right from its title to its object to the specifics in terms of curriculum definitions to faculty definitions and the type of people that must make up the faculty And then in terms of examination and modes of examination, all of those components are going to be subjected to major public engagement such that it will be enhanced. So at the end of the day, we have a law that makes Ghana proud and that guarantees future for law education in Ghana.
I mean, for students, what's your take on this?
I think it's very commendable. It is something that we've been fighting for over the years. I mean, since 2019, we started some demonstration. I was part of it. I've been a petitioner on some of the cases where we took.
Is it the one that turned violent?
Yes.
By the police?
Yeah, they beat us until we had to jump to the Canadian embassy to seek refuge. But basically, we went through all that. We did another one in 2021 with a 499. I am being careful, but I don't know whether I support the word he used, fundamental challenges. I think it's more deliberate than a challenge. I say that because if you look at the GLC in itself, these are made up of lawyers, judges, and faculty heads. Now, he refers to the 499 issue, where a retrospective law was being applied. You finish an exam, they bring a new law. You know you can't do that. But they looked on, and we had to fight until later we were admitted. So for me, I think some of the things are.
Were you part of the 499? Or you just,
I
as
was,
a leader,
I was
you're
the
part
lead
of it?
of, yeah. But at the end of the day, they know the right thing. They know what they have to do as a GLC or an institution. I am being careful in my statements because I'm happy, all right, but this is a politician, and this is the politics thereof. A few years ago, we saw a whole area declared as the law something. Like they started building, and within 11 months, they are supposed to finish the law school or whatever, and we never saw anything happen. I support and I believe this particular regime because they wrote the private member bill. I saw it myself. They were trying to push. It didn't come to pass. But again, it is politics. But if this is going to be established, I think it's one of the best things we can do for ourselves because, one, a lot of students are traveling out of the country.
Yeah.
That is dollar that they are using to pay. I think Gambia is paying about $8,000 per student. If you multiply it by, say, 10, that is about 80,000 bucks. I don't know the numbers in the US, the UK, and other places. If we are going to expand for people to go to school, that would be fantastic. The problem has been facilities. If Makola cannot take it, you either expand Makola for it to take there. I just read that 25 faculties.
Yeah.
So if everyone is churning out, let's say 100 students, that's 2,500 every year. Makola cannot contain it. So allow the faculties, give them that right. Let us write something like the WAEC, which allows every one of us to write the exam. Whoever passes, passes. I've heard arguments about quantity and quality. I think it's flawed because if you are going to have examiners marking it with the strictness that it deserves, why would there be a quantity issue or the dilution of the quality?
Because you sift at the point of the exam. When you sit for the bar,
Exactly.
that's when you sift.
When I get there, if I deserve 90, you give me 90. If I don't make it, don't blame me. Blame yourself because maybe I had 10 and you gave me 50 and I passed. But you can't blame me for quality when you are actually the one at the helm of affairs to determine whether I should become a lawyer or not. So I think this issue about quality and quantity does not really matter if we are going to do the right things. And if we are going to ensure that these institutions or faculties are properly accredited, we ensure that we enforce what we expect them to do. If they have to have a capacity of, let's say, 20, it shouldn't exceed 20. If they have to do something right, we should have institutions in place who enforce such provisions. We cannot renege on our responsibility and blame the students or even the faculties. So we should have that institution, ensure that we are strict on some of these things, if this is how we want to go. But I think the provision that they are the private member bill that they are about to put across is fantastic.
The government has adopted it now, so it's going to go in the name of the government.
I don't want to sound political, but we saw the LGBT issue. It went all the way to the presidency. It wasn't.
No, but this one has been announced already on the floor by the majority leader.
Announcement. I get it.
But it's coming.
You see, I am losing confidence in political talk.
Okay.
Let me see the action, and I am happy. Yes, I'm not saying.
So until you see the first reading?
Not even the second. I
Until
want
it's
to
passed.
exactly.
Okay.
Because it can truncate at any point in time. Have we fulfilled it? No. But let me say, I have seen Roxanne, I've seen Francis. They supported us when we're fighting for legal education. I know what they can do.
And you know the difference now. Roxanne is the majority chief whip.
That's right.
So in terms of shepherding the thing through Parliament and having it, he's the guy who's going to do it. He's actually said that last week on this same show. That's right. They're going to consider under the certificate of urgency, which means that they can actually pass it in one day if they want to, right?
Awesome.
Go through all the processes in a day to pass it. He, Xavier, he's now also a member of the General Legal Council. So they are in a position now to use that authority that they now have to shepherd the thing across. So you must have faith.
I have even a problem with the General Legal Council. If they are going to behave the way they are behaving, then I don't think that institution should even exist.
Okay, why?
Okay. So I gave you a reference to the retrospective issue. Not only that, we put people in authority to take decisions that will possibly affect the general people. You sit there, there's a bottleneck, you keep quiet about it, or you join the politicians and do nothing about it. That is not the GLC I want. I want a GLC that is progressive, that is reformative, that thinks long-term and finds solutions to problems. You don't sit in the problem and think we should applaud you. So if it is the same GLC we are going to have with that mindset and attitude, then it's unfortunate. But I'm hoping that what he said, and I know Xavier, he's saying that they are going to ensure that it's expanded, this would happen and that will happen. We want to see it, and we'll applaud them and we'll be happy to go to school.
So you raised it, maybe I should ask him. I mean, Xavier, you can expect the skepticism because we've been here before. And so people are not sure. We've almost come to this point before, and then people are disappointed. You must have consulted. You must have spoken to your colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Do you get a sense that there is general support for this, that when you introduce, this will not be frustrated somewhere in the process?
Thank you very much. I mean, I share the sentiment of my friend and my colleague. I was with him when we were doing the demonstration against the General Legal Council on the issue of the 499. So I can understand the pain with which he is addressing this matter. But I just want to assure him and also assure the people of Ghana that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has promised to reset Ghana. And that reset agenda is not only a reset in the economy of Ghana, but it's also a reset in the legal education of Ghana and other aspects of our expression as a people. And so His Excellency the President and then the Honorable Attorney General, Honorable Ayine, are super committed to reforming legal education. And remember that way back in 2021, Honorable Ayine himself, then as a member of parliament and a former deputy attorney general, also introduced a private members bill to reform legal education. So apart from Honorable Dafia Mekwe and myself, who were leading a private bill to reform legal education, the current attorney general, who was then a former deputy attorney general, had also introduced another bill for the purposes of reforming legal education. So everybody's ad idem when it comes to the need to reform legal education. Whether it is faculty, students, practitioners, everyone believes that there is something fundamentally wrong with the system. And I can again appreciate the fact that it may look like a deliberate systemic thing, but that is why we are where we are, and that is why we are bringing all this. We are bringing our expertise and our energies together to ensure that this is redone. So I can only assure you that when you come to Parliament, all members of Parliament, some of whom are also law students, really believe that it is time for us to reform legal education and to break the monopoly we currently have at Makola and the kind of monopoly we have under the current regime of the General Legal Council. So I can only assure you that this is not going to be a talk show, but it will be translated into realities, and it will happen sooner than you can even think of.
Mr. Sorry, there's a point he touched on about quality. And that keeps coming up each time the decentralizing legal education comes up. Because you are head of an institution that trains lawyers, I should ask you, isn't that a real threat that when you open this up and everybody else can train and then they can register and sit for the bar, the quantity versus quality question will come up.
Thank you, Evans. The quality and quantity issue is not a recent development at all. It has been with us. It was with Kwame Nkrumah when he established the law school in November 1958. We are told that the first applicants numbered 568. And the first director of the law school, Professor John H. Lang, thought that the figure 568 was too huge, and therefore approached Kwame Nkrumah to do something about it. And Kwame Nkrumah said, you know what? If 1 million Ghanaians out of 5 million want to study law, admit them. But when they come, the system of examination, the assessment, must make the difference. But I'm of the view that we've reached a stage where reform is not only desirable, but a necessity. Reform of legal education in this country is long overdue. So the time is ripe now to overhaul the entire system. It's not only breaking the monopoly of the Ghana School of Law, but breaking the monopoly of conservatism, the elitism of the legal profession. You see, in the 50s and 60s, the lawyers at the helm of affairs in this country had all been trained in England or the US. And when they came back to Ghana, they behaved more or less like English lawyers, chose to eat like English lawyers, drank like English lawyers, the whiskeys and the jazz and the bars. Now, it becomes difficult when in an environment that doesn't know that elitism, you train your lawyers, to come up with that mentality. And therefore, Kwame Nkrumah would have none of that. And his primary objective was to establish a law school for the country, the lawyers, so that the product can dilute the lawyers trained abroad. That's how come initially we had the extension between the made in here or Makola lawyers and then made in there and the British trained lawyers. Fortunately for us, that phase has almost, passed out. We now have lawyers who have been locally trained. Very few lawyers, are trained abroad these days. But like Esare, pointed out, we've made the system such that it just gives room for a select few from affluent homes, which is not good enough. So if we desire to reform legal education, then it must be a total reform, not just, the classroom reform. And, to begin with, the entire general legal system must be scrapped. You cannot have a new lawyer in Ghana supervised by a colonial institution like the General Legal Council.
So you also support the scrapping of the General Legal Council? Okay.
It should be scrapped, abolished. In this place, let us establish a National Council for Legal Education, as it is done elsewhere. National Council for Legal Education. If you have about 26 law faculties now, you cannot have, a wieldy National Council for Legal Education, and therefore you introduce the rotation system, whereby every 2 or 3 years, the deans, or maybe 12 at a time, and then the Attorney General, the Chief Justice must have nothing to do with legal education. The Chief Justice already has, enormous problem, huge problems, to solve for the judiciary. Then you add legal education. So legal education now becomes, the toothpick for the head of the judiciary. If the head, is very conservative, So everything, must follow that. If the Attorney General doesn't like, a particular, that is what they must. If you have an independent and autonomous council, National Council for Legal Education, and you select them from the professors who are professing the law in the classroom and from the Ghana Bar Association, they will be, they will be better placed to administer legal education than selecting 4 justices of the Supreme Court, whether they know anything about legal education or not. It doesn't matter. And these are people, who know very little about legal education. Legal education is different.
But many judges are law lecturers. They lecture. Many judges
some of them, not all of them. Some of them, not all of them. But it may turn out that the head of the judiciary may not necessarily be somebody who is interested in legal education. Yeah. And therefore, if you have somebody who is less interested in that, it means we have a moribund, legal education in the country. We don't, need that kind of thing. So you scrap, bring in, a more
so similar to what you have in the
progressive
WAEC. So you have a WAEC sort of arrangement.
Yes.
Independent of any government, independent of any state.
Sure, like the special prosecutor.
And then they run the legal education throughout.
Then you revise the curriculum. The curriculum was developed in 1956.
The curriculum we're still using
was developed for the law school, was developed in 1956.
It hasn't changed since?
When it has, piecemeal.
Okay.
Yes. So 1956, then, the law school was established, 1958. The first, instruction, the first lecture took place on 20th November, 1958 at the current, Supreme Court Library. It was a small, that could only accommodate 20 students.
So that's why 19 graduated.
Those who were called to the bar in 1963 were only 12.
12.
And 3, had traveled Kwakuba and Co.
So that's what, and 9 were 9. Actually, okay.
Yes, and the 9, I think the last one, I stand to correction, but I think the last one died last year.
Okay.
So not just to, bring a bill, but the bill must have, more progressive expectations than, I haven't seen the bill.
Yeah.
But I think that looking at the name alone tells me that it's not too broad. So let us do away with the, curriculum we inherited. Let us, now we must admit, we have to concede that we are Ghanaians first and foremost. And therefore, our law must be suited to our aspirations, not to suit, the aspirations of an Englishman or an American, but the Ghanaian. We have to widen access to justice. How do you widen access to justice? We don't teach translation, so we leave translation to SSS, JHS. We don't teach, interpreting. We don't teach communication. Now, when you enter any courtroom and an interpreter or translator is interpreting from, say, English to a Ghanaian language, goodness me, problem. The time has come to align the teaching of law with our own the local languages, so that Evans can go to the courtroom. You may choose to, speak in your mother, dialect, and the judge must be able to understand you. We don't need any interpreter. If, you are practicing in the Volta region and, you have ever graduates who are interpreting and so rather than have a subject like English and French, let us introduce Twi, Dangme, Ebe, Hausa.
In our law schools.
The law school. Right from, the secondary school to our faculties. So we are going to, offer law.
At Mancrest.
Yes, at Mancrest and Ghanaian language to train the next generation of court interpreters. We need to produce handbooks.
Let me ask you though, because this bill is proposing that Mount Chris, for example, now will be empowered to train the professional courses also. So your student can right from there sit the bar, possibly in your school. Do you have the capacity to do that?
Sure. Sure. Each of the faculties training lawyers must have the capacity, to train the future generation of lawyers. So if you run
the professional courses that would have otherwise gone to Bokola to.
Yeah, so Mount Chris University, you do your LLB at Mount Chris University, and you want, to pursue the professional there. The arrangement that Xavier is talking about, is the affordability of the National Council for Legal Education, creating an enabling environment so that anywhere any graduate can go and write the bar exam, and if you pass, then you'll be called to the bar. At that stage, the institution or agency that must have the most say in the whole enterprise must be the Ghana Bar Association, not the General Legal Council.
Why the Ghana Bar Association?
Because they are the mouthpiece of the lawyers, and therefore, Sari is talking about, quantity and quality. The Ghana Bar must be able, to know whether or not the system is being diluted as a result of the quote and unquote overnumbering. If there are too many people will feel that being saturated, it's being saturated, but that is not so. See, if you look at, you mentioned 9,000.
Yes.
9,000. Yeah. I tell you, the 9,000 is not from 1960. The 9,000 is from 1897 when John Mensah Saba was called to the bar. His name still appears on the roll of lawyers. Yes. So if you are counting 9,000, you will count from 1897 today. So all those who have died along the
They're still on the roll.
They are still.
That's why you still find it on the GBA's website, because that's the number they have there. But that's fascinating indeed. Xavier, please give me your comment on the suggestion that we scrap the GLC and replace it with a council in this bill.
He just became a member.
I was one of the foremost members of parliament. In fact, one of the bills I introduced in the 8th parliament was to dissolve the General Legal Council.
Interesting.
It's such an irony that
today you're a member of the council.
By the to serve on that council. But that was, yes, because, and I made a strong argument that I didn't believe that the council, I really, and I still stand by those views, that it is a bit amorphous, and the kind of, its composition and its function is a bit problematic. It's not as accountable as it's supposed to be to the system. And I'm talking based on realities and things that have happened with people that have challenged either the legal council itself or challenged the work of the Board of Legal Education and so on and so forth. So, I mean, fast forward, what we seek to do now is to make sure that we correct the ills in the society, or the ills or the challenges that we currently have with legal education, which also borders on the way the council also operates. And so I wholly agree with Prof. Ansari about the need to replace that council, particularly the aspect of the council that deals with legal education with the Council of Legal Education. And I would be very surprised that is not in the new bill that is coming. In fact, it's because the bill is being finalized at cabinet level, and then we'll be able to, I don't know how soon, either it will be this week or next week, that will be bringing the bill to the floor, so we can all have the benefit of the final draft of the bill. And the good thing is that I serve on the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. All of us as members of Parliament still have an opportunity to amend parts of the bill to ensure that these aspirations that we are talking about, we can achieve them. So I can only assure Prof that, Prof, the suggestions you're making on this platform, I would even encourage that when we call for a stakeholder meeting, you can submit a paper, or you can submit a memo to Parliament. You can actually come and engage members of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, particularly when we are considering the object and purpose of this bill, so that whatever we come up with would serve us and serve the best interest of Ghanaians. Because honestly speaking, it is so frustrating wanting to have legal education in Ghana. And I believe that this is the time for us to reform in the light of the bigger reset agenda of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama.
You must feel reassured, having heard him. Yes. And because it takes a lot of courage for a member of the General Legal Council to say that I still support the scrapping of the council.
Yeah, that should tell you that the position we've taken that it should be scrapped is actually a good one. Now, it's more like putting square pegs in round holes. Lawyers are supposed to litigate. Judges are supposed to sit on issues and ensure that things are going well, or listen to issues and resolve them. And you have them running education, really? So I feel their place is not. So I support what Prof is saying, that you need people in the faculties or people at the law schools to be on those GLCs because they have a practical experience, they understand what is going on, they see the problems of the students, and they can be the best people. They can actually be the best people to contribute to the progress of legal education. So it shouldn't be somebody sitting somewhere, looking at, sitting in court, ensuring that courts are run properly, or an attorney general who is following some cases, trying to push education. How? I mean, I don't see how that correlation actually works. But so I support that bit where he thinks people within the faculties should be able to run legal education. I want to just finish by saying this. For those who have intentions to oppose this, that the Universal Declaration on Human Rights actually said education is a right. If you come to Article 17, it says we are all equal before the law. If you come to Article 25(2) of the Constitution, it says that every human being or every person has the right to establish a private school at all levels. So if these provisions are in the law, all we can do is to encourage people to do it, to liberate us of the stress we are going through. So if people are willing to take up legal education and then run it like WAEC, where finally everybody will write the exam, we should all encourage it because at the end of the day, we want to go to school. It pains me more that some of these older generations went to school for free and we are ready to pay our school fees and yet they are frustrating us, which is very unacceptable. I feel they must come to terms with the fact that the globe, I mean the world has moved on and they cannot still be holding on to the things of old when we are actually thinking progressively. So they need to look at that carefully.
Thank you very much. I think there's a lot to chew on. And Prof, you'll be definitely going before Parliament. He says he's invited you already. That when this comes next week or the week after, they bring a paper and go and justify it. I'm pretty sure we'll hear
it's my passion. So
yes, definitely. Enjoy the rest of evening. And JV, I'm grateful. See you in Parliament on this. Maybe I'll also bring a proposal on that subject also to you for you to consider. Enjoy the rest of your evening.